Hey, welcome back to State of CRM podcast. I'm Ben Bouteille.
And I'm Matt Engstrom.
We are really glad to be back, every week. But just before jumping into the topic, Matt, we have a small announcement to do. October 13th, so in 10 days, 1 week, we'll have a webinar with Sally Beauty to share, and we'll have a guest from the brand, the VP of CRM from Sally Beauty, sharing how Sally Beauty used machine learning to deliver a customer-centric experience. So that will be October 13th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, US, and 7 p.m. in Europe, French time, Paris time. So don't hesitate to register. That will be super interesting. So the link will be in the description of the podcast or the video. Let's jump into the topic today's topic, Matt.
Yeah, I'm excited to do so, and I think I'm really excited about that webinar as well because I think it's really relevant to some of the things we're talking about today, and I've had a preview into some of the content, and there's some really good insight from a brand directly who's actually done some of the things that we're talking about executing today. So super relevant. And that brings me to the topic that we're talking about, which is something we've been discussing a little bit, but hearing a lot about from brands, and that's really what does true personalization look like, and what is the best practice in terms of executing that as a CRM marketer. And we've been hearing a lot about segmentation versus individualization, the second being a little bit of a newer term, but both can reflect personalization in different ways. And personalization, just to kind of kick it off, when we say that, what we really mean is creating relevant experiences for customers. So not just necessarily sending out an email with an optimized open rate or garnering increased click-through, but really creating an overall immersive experience for customers, because that is a huge motivator in terms of getting long-term customer value, high brand equity, and just ultimately getting customers to buy your products. But as we know, there are different approaches to that, and marketers are kind of right now caught between trying to figure out what the best approach is and how do they scale that approach.
Yeah, and that's really something that we hear one term used for the other, or mixed up, segmentation, individualization, personalization, all the same. The truth is, it's not. So let's get more in detail and into for each of them and why some approach are maybe a little bit better than other, or will deliver better results than other approach. And let's start with segmentation. Segmentation that exists for a long time. That's the methodology or the approach of building group cohorts of people, of customers, of prospects based on some criteria. So that's better than doing mass communication for sure. That's really the move from doing only mass communication to identifying some groups of people with some data points that are the same, some behavior, some past purchase, characteristic, attributes, social demographics information that can be the same. And so we can gather them in the same group and send communication that we feel is relevant for this group of people. The issue with this approach is that we are making choices as human, or even if you are using the technology to identify a group of cohort of people based on some data points, usually not a lot. The more basic segments are based out of 2, 3, 4 data points, interaction, engagements, touch points. That can be a lot more, and you can use 10, 15, 20, 50 data points to gather people in a group, in a cohort. But still, that's assuming that all the user in this group will behave and react the same way to the communication because they have some data points in common.
Yep.
That's not treating them as individual. That's putting them in boxes. Boxes can be huge or smaller and smaller, and so you have more and more segments, but you are adding up a lot of cases and boxes, still you are assuming that's 10,000, 100,000, 1 million of people will behave the same way because they opened an email on jeans 2 months ago and navigated on a website category or came and purchased something in the store, same product, but their personal story is totally different, and that's not really relevant to predict and to be able to know how will be the future of their behavior with your brand.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you think about it, no two people are the same. So if you're grouping, 100 people or 10,000 people into a segment, you're assuming that those people all have the same behavior, and that's just not realistic. But I think the reason for that has just been tech limitations.
Yeah, that's been a saying that it's a practice that exists for not ever, but for a very long time. I mean, RFM segmentation, or that's would say old school segmentation. I mean, that's still basic segmentation used by most of the companies. And the reason why it's still used and something that we see on a lot of strategies, CRM strategies, that's because the technology or the vendors or the solution you are using have no interest to change that.
Yeah.
They developed that 20 years ago. Nobody is, really disrupting that or asking them to change the way they provide the service. Neither competition, there is no much competition asking or forcing them to change this approach, or marketers. Marketers, I really ask you to challenge that. I just sit back and say, okay, I'm having these segments because that's what I have access to due to my technology. What would you do if you were not limited by this platform that are just holding you back in a thing of the past?
Yeah. And the answer to that is really, kind of getting into the second piece, which is individualization, which is, I think, a more sophisticated form of personalization. I think a lot of marketers assume that it's unachievable. And if you think about it, it really is kind of incredible conceptually to think that it might be possible. And that's really, individualization is taking the entirety of your data. Because kind of going back earlier, if you, group a segment into like women 18 to 34, like that's one data point, and that basically means you know nothing about those people at all.
Yeah.
Like there's so many attributes that you still have yet to understand that are unknown, not just individual data points, but the intersections of those data points, which also can tell you additional things. So individualization is really all about taking sort of the entirety of the data that you have available. And a lot of marketers have tons of data that they're not even really using to inform segmentation, or can't be used because they don't have the right tools to use it. So using the entirety of your data set to really understand as much as you possibly can about each individual customer in your data set. And individualization assumes implicitly that each and every customer is unique and can approach each and every customer by providing or by sort of offering them a unique experience using the data that you have available. And again, it's sort of a holistic approach, not just saying, okay, I'm going to create a cohort of X, Y, and Z, but assuming that each and every customer needs to be understood differently, and can be because you have so much information that you're not even using to be able to do that. And it creates sort of a knowledge base of each and every customer. The difficulty there, going back to sort of why marketers are leaning in so hard into segmentation, is that traditionally it's been difficult to scale. Like how is it even possible to take a database of 1 million customers and create an individual knowledge base of each one so that you can create a relevant experience for each person, which is ultimately what we want for as consumers and what marketers want to deliver for their brand. And like that is the tricky part. But ultimately, like that's where we want to go. So I guess the question is, how can a marketer, especially marketers that have been relying so heavily on segmentation, evolve to that point?
Yeah, that's just while you were explaining that, I was just thinking about where it's come from too. I mean, think about TV and ads. I mean, ads. Sorry, let's let's think about ads on TV.
Yeah.
I mean, the only way you had to choose who you are talking to is to define this big segment, saying that, okay, consumer that are women from this age to this age, or men that are watching this program on TV, and so I want to target men that are 30 to 40, and I know that they are looking this program. I mean, that's same type of concept of segmentation that exists forever, and some of the media, in terms of technology and of capacity, we are not able to evolve and progress really fast. And the TV is now connected, and there are more and more progress toward this type of approach of individualization of the ads, but you still don't know who is watching the TV. So there are still challenges on this side. But for all of the things digital, you have more control on who is receiving the message. So the approach improved, but you still have this past sticking to you in terms of marketers and practices and approach from agencies. I'm not saying all agencies for sure, but some bad habits stick. I mean, a lot to the approaches.
Yeah, it makes me think back in the days when I used to work in research, and I would do audience research or try to understand audiences that are visiting our website. And back when we were pulling basic ComScore segments, we were using the same type of segmentation for digital that was being used on TV, because that's like all we had the ability to really use, but also it was just like sort of like tradition moving forward into digital. But that was 10, 12, 15 years ago, and things have changed significantly since then. But we still see some of those like legacy practices being upheld today.
Yeah, all habits. Sorry, that was just in the discussion that that's really something that's we the roots of that and it needs to change, and that will change. That's coming to the point. That will change if we have access to, as marketer, to the technology to leverage all these data points, as you were mentioning. That if we have there are a lot of data points, there are a ton of data. The challenge is to use it, and to use it. To me, there are two different things that need to be together. The technology, to be able to access that correctly, for sure, that can be a challenge, but there are a lot of solutions to really gather all of that and being able to leverage and the data this way in terms of grouping it. And the marketer, the marketer who wants to do it and wants to challenge what is done and really leverage it. That's one of the maybe a personal example. Again, I think that will ring a bell to everyone. Everyone faced that, but no later than yesterday, received an email from Amazon, from a big seller, Amazon, sending me a message, an email saying you might be interested by this product in one category. For sure, last week I was browsing the category, watching this product. And actually, I bought it. I bought the product. I already have it at home. And 1 week later, they send me this newsletter, this email saying that you might be interested by this product. The intent from the marketer who created this trigger, this journey, is to provide a personalized experience. Oh, Ben navigated on this category on our website. That would be nice to showcase some product from the category, using some data points that are left during my contact with the brand. That's nice, but not leveraging the entire data points or all the data points I left. And one big that is not hidden anywhere. That's quite obvious. I bought the product. Provide not a good experience. That's not providing a good experience. I'm just saying, what are they doing? They are one of the most innovative brand in digital commerce and all of that, and still not delivering on really true personalized experience. They want to do a good personalization, but that's not individual experience or individualized experience because they just put me in a group of people who navigated into this category, whether or not I did something else.
Yeah, it's the pitfalls of using incomplete data sets, which again, like to your point, is surprising for a company that has more data than potentially any commerce entity out there.
And again, that's not a small data point. That's not something complicated to leverage. That's if they're able to identify me in the in navigation on the website, that's not complicated to identify me with an order.
Yeah.
So the matching is not. That's obvious. That's not something that really rocket science, and still not the case.
Yeah, but the good thing is there. I guess they got the relevancy piece right.
Yeah,
like, because they were delivering a product that's relevant to you, obviously, since you already bought it. They were just a little bit behind the curve. And I think that's kind of really where, individualization can start, is ultimately we're all in the market for products, and the end goal is for a marketer to get the products in our hands that we are able to and willing to buy. Yeah. And that's really, I think, a good place to start when you kind of think about individualization. And there's other things to think about too in terms of like AI-based custom content delivery and whatnot. But I think ultimately delivering products to people that they want in that moment is the best place to start.
Yeah, for sure. And the way to do it, that's making us jump to the next talking point on how to do it. We talk to a lot of clients, a lot of teams, marketing teams that rely for some of them on data science team or data team or internal capabilities to do segmentation, to identify segments for offer, to build campaigns, whatever the channel is. The issue is, how do you scale that? I saw companies having very well-staffed data science team where you can have 1, 2, 3, 10 people in the data science team available to help to do create audiences, segments that will be refreshed. And that can be really highly you can get high performance from that, for sure. The complexity of that is how long does it take? How often you can repeat this process? That's one question mark. And how do you scale? Okay, you're able manually to do the best audience you can, maybe better than the machine. I get it. How do you do that 10 times per week? How do you do that 100 times per month? How do you do that 1,000 times every year? How do you reply that? How do you do that in 5 minutes instead of 2 weeks because the marketing team has changed the plan? That's something it's complicated to do manually. Even if this data science team are building predictive model, machine learning, that's still supervised learning. So if they want to scale, they will apply the same recipe for every single campaign.
Yeah, so, and that doesn't really take into account the buying moment as well. Like, maybe you can build a propensity model 1 week, but it's technically out of date a day later or a week later, a month later. Like, how do you take into account, like, I may be ready to buy next week, but I'm not ready to buy this week. And like, that's another thing as well that's difficult to scale, is just the timing of when someone's in market.
Yeah, so the timing, and that's one criteria of that. The thing that everyone aim to predict, that it is the right timing. But if this team build models or tools, structure internally to predict that, and you ask them to really scale at 1,000 times per year, they will have 1, 2, 3 bricks, 3 models that they can reuse.
Exactly.
And every single campaign you want to launch, you will ask them to identify an audience for, will be based on the same model, on the same way of finding people. The issue is that we are talking about individualization. That's one individual, one person will react differently to different offers, and the criteria to detect that will be different. That's where unsupervised machine learning is the game changer. That's where the AI that can auto-adapt, that will learn itself and change and do all the capability, all the possibilities for every single campaign you want to promote, that makes the difference. And it's not saying that it's more intelligent than you data science team that are building models. That just it can scale. And as a marketer, that's easier to leverage. I mean, that's better results to leverage this type of technology than just relying on someone else that can't really scale. And the way to scale is just to repeat the same usage or the same pattern again and again.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this isn't science fiction.
No,
we were talking about earlier. It's not. This isn't something we're talking about that marketers can use in a year or 10 years. This is something that exists today. So kind of around when you're talking earlier about segmentation, and a big reason for marketers leaning into that is there's still a lot of partners out there that really are focused on delivering segments, and they can, some companies deliver thousands of segments, but going back to the previous points to reiterate that, those are still groupings of people assuming that they behave the same, that their consumer behaviors are the same, that what they want to buy is the same, that in that moment in time, what they want to buy is the same. But the reality of it is technology has evolved a lot since then. And we're not in the days where segmentation is the only option. Even if segmentation is improving, it's still segmentation. The reality of it is that AI that you described that's able to take the entirety of someone's data set and create propensity models that are refreshed every day exists.
Yeah, and so something that I maybe want to precise too is that can be scary for marketers that unfortunately are at the beginning of the journey of making the CRM strategy progress, evolve, and saying that, okay, what is my next step? I still have too much of mass campaign, and they have the willingness to make progress, to challenge that. That's a good news. What is your next step is not necessarily segmentation. You don't need to check the box of, after broad messages and the next step to improve that's a small next step. I can't do a big jump ahead in the future, and because that's not the future, that's today. Today, the technology that exists are still segmentation, but if you invest into that, continue to invest and add more and more segmentation capabilities, you're just adding more and more things that are from the past. I mean, 15 years, 20 years ago, that was already existing, and nothing really changed. The UI changed, fine, but that's still query to select 5, 10, 20 criteria and build a segment. And the other option is right now available. That's skipping that and doing real individualization. Might be a little bit of additional work to project, to envision how it can look like and scale in your strategy. But I think it's worth spending time right now to think about it, and how you can just jump and skip something that is already in the past. I mean, it's not because your competitors are still applying it that it's the best thing to do. Maybe you can take an advantage on them by skipping the step they are struggling into and just looping and into they are really in the loop of adding more and more segments, and just skipping that, taking a shortcut and being on what's available right now. And we are not talking about flying taxi drones for humans. That's technology that exists and works, and that is reliable. Not something that is still prototypes.
Yeah, and I mean the technology isn't difficult to use either.
No,
so it's not something that's going to require, like heavy tech investment or heavy development or is inflexible. Like it's something that's available today that marketers can tap into and start integrating with, immediely to deliver results. And it works.
Yeah. That's I think the conclusion, that it works, that exists, and that's just waiting for you as a marketer to lead and roll up your sleeves and really shake all this strategy. I mean, shake all the system of getting stuck in all this vendor selling old stuff, even if that looks, I mean, that's a little bit shiny today because they changed the UI. That's still an approach that is not personalization and not individualization. That's a way of doing personalization that is not really the fresh way of doing it.
It's old school.
Yeah, old school, old school approach.
Exactly.
Yeah, I hope. I mean, Matt, I don't know if you had anything else to add on the topic. I think we covered all the other points. But
I think we covered it all.
Great. So that's time to say goodbye until next week and the next topic. So it was really great again to have you on the podcast, and we really appreciate all the audience, and we have more and more people listening to the podcast, to watching the video on YouTube, sending us message and feedback on the content. So really appreciate all the support. Don't hesitate to leave a review, 5-star if you're on Apple Podcast, some thumb up on YouTube. That's help to this content spread to other marketers. And we'll keep you posted with the next content.
Yeah, have a great week and see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.